Madam Chairperson, the Executive Deputy Chairperson of NYDA, Madam Karabo Mohale, the African Union Youth Envoy, African Union, traditional leaders present here today, representative of the African Export-Import Bank, senior government officials, speakers at this investment roundtable, representatives of institutions present here today, representatives of the public and private sector, members of the diplomatic and consular corps, donors and development partners, representatives of youth-led and women-led organizations and entities, representatives from the diaspora, the phenomenal woman and her team of organizers, Margaret Molefe, dear facilitators, the media fraternity, all other protocols respectfully and duly observed. Madam Chairperson, today marks another very important occasion for NIDA, I don't know whether that's the acronym you would call it, to continue its engagement for the advancement and promotion of youth, specifically of South Africa, but more generally so for the youth of the African continent. I am honored to be invited to give a special address here today on this auspicious occasion. I am aware that this is a follow-up to a presidential investment roundtable held in 2022. This conference calls for stakeholders to deliberate in creating spaces and opportunities for young people to acquire skills and expertise which will increase their employability and enhance their business skills and make them fulfill their dreams. Madam Chairperson, access to local and international markets are identified as crucial focal point towards creating jobs. The greatest opportunity to facilitate and realize this is to leverage on the opportunity that the African Continental Free Trade Area, as well as SACU, as part of building sustainable businesses that contribute meaningfully to our economies. The AFTA is now making us think globally in terms of within the continent and within our countries. We have to be a little bit innovative in how we analyze trade that we're talking about. What we must ask ourselves is, have we succeeded in achieving the call to create spaces and opportunities for young people to acquire the skills and expertise to increase their capacities for employability and enhance their business skills? It's very fundamental for us to ask. And today, listening to the panels and the observations and the presentations made by the Statistician General is bleak. The reality is very clear, and we have to do something about it. If yes, how many young people are employed in our countries across the available job spectrum under various entities, and how many young people have created businesses or are into entrepreneurship? It's very important to ask ourselves. We need to establish the data sets as our entry point, which will enhance our planning and serve as the catalyst in facilitating the current and future direction for youth in Africa. The data set is not very pleasant, and we have to acknowledge them. And if there are, how can we turn those negative data sets into positive ones, which is possible, it is doable, if we sit down in a round table to discuss them and come up with solutions. Madam Chairperson, I am informed that the second investment roundtable is aimed at accelerating much needed investment across various industries on a national, regional, and international scale under the theme Unlocking Investments in Human Capital for an Inclusive Economy. One of many fundamental questions I would like to raise or flag today is, are our countries, regions, and continent at large ready for this? And if so, how ready are we in Africa as a continent, and in particular in our various countries, to respond strategically to youth issues? Are we only responding to the call from our counterparts from the developed countries without preparing ourselves adequately to prepare our human capital to respond to the ever-competing forces of our economies? These are fundamental questions we should reflect on. I would like us to examine our countries and the continent in an attempt to understand the economic and political ecosystems that are available to our advantage and examine their efficiency, effectiveness and sustainability, and analyze them for a constructive engagement of the continent for our youth to secure a better deal. We need a common and coordinated voice to address the challenges that our continent faces in promoting the effective engagement of youth. Madam Chairperson, this second investment roundtable is towards the right direction and a great opportunity to harness most of the work already done to get it right if Africa is going to leave a legacy for our youth to engage and self-actualize. At this juncture, I would like us to analyze who are the youth or the young people. The youth in most of our countries constitute over 60% of our countries, and I want to validate the presentation of the Statistician General that this cuts across the whole continent. It's not only in South Africa. Population who falls within the age ranges of 15 to 45, depending on the definition of our national youth development policies. There, again, we are faced with discrepancies of the definition of youth across the continent. There are various factors influencing this, namely religious and cultural and our economic activities, and when gender comes to play in this, it brings in different dynamics. You have seen how gender played when you disaggregate the statistics by male and female, that across the whole country there are more women who are unemployed than men, even though both are not very impressive. We have to acknowledge the fact. So the disaggregation of that is very important to help us in our policy planning and implementation process to understand the type of interventions that are going to do. We must come to consensus and agree on who is a youth or young person, and we must build a universal consensus, just like we did on who is a child from 0 to 18 years. Because there are preponderances, there are challenges in terms of who is a youth, and it is contextualized. If youth starts from 15 to 35, or 15 to 45, now we are saying early marriage is one key factor that deters girls' education, child labor, and also many other things. So we need to sit down and discuss them in order to have a common ground in what we agree as youth on the continent to be able to come up with the right policies. When we talk about the economy, it includes human, financial, and other social capital that need to come together to form our critical asset for development and growth. Africa has an abundance of human capital to help the continent leapfrog and move forward with our development plans nationally, regionally, and continentally. I am quoting the Stats SA 2023. I quote, "It is our considered belief that young people representing the majority of the population of the country and continent need to be seen as potential investment and cornerstone of the success and growth of the continent." The Statistician General showed the numbers, and indeed, that is what it is. With this conviction, how much have our governments done to realize these convictions? In our attempt to address this, let us take a snapshot of statistics across our continent. In South Africa, the report that he has given shows that unemployment rate among young people is at a staggering high of 62%. In West Africa, estimates across the continent indicate that, for instance, in Nigeria, youth unemployment stands at 53.4% according to the National Bureau of Statistics in 2022. In my native Gambia, a recent survey estimated youth unemployment at 41.5%, that is the GBOS. These are unacceptably high percentages of a demographic on whose future the African continent depends. You are the leaders of today and leaders of tomorrow. It's not tomorrow. You are already in the present, and the future, you have to move towards the future. Looking at this snapshot, almost 2/3 of young people are either unemployed or underemployed, and this should be a cause for concern for the continent. We are sitting on a time bomb. However, there is cause for optimism, as this roundtable is on the path to avert any crisis that may have a continental impact, because the picture is the same in many of our countries. The objectives of this roundtable are to present the pathway of market accessibility through AFTA, advance the growth and development of SMMEs through financial and non-financial support, lobby for the establishment of a national youth development fund, increase capital investment towards youth development programs, and I want to congratulate NIDA for at least getting the commitment of R500,000 to move forward with. I hope this should increase. It's still small. We should do more. And the fifth one is to create a platform to identify possible market linkages between young people and potential investors. You have the opportunity. Africa has the opportunity, and it is there. It is latent. We have to revive it. We need to unleash it. And it is you, the youth, who can do that. Madam Chairperson, this roundtable is expected to bring together the strategic partners from both the private and public sector to have critical engagements on how investments can be increased to implement youth development priorities and to present viable solutions on how trade can be a potent tool in alleviating the scourge of unemployment among young people. Similarly, the ultimate goal would be to set a percentage of our national budgets towards youth development initiatives throughout the continent through collaboration and set aside youth-owned enterprises. This raises a fundamental question on how we leverage the opportunities that the African Continental Free Trade Agreement brings to us. And this is where I want to dwell on, so that we get to know that we have it, it is possible. Operationalization of the African Continent Free Trade Area for youth participation. What is AFTA? AFTA is an ambitious trade pact to form the world's largest free trade area by creating a single market for goods and services of almost 1.3 billion people across Africa and deepening the economic integration of Africa. Deepening the economic integration of Africa is a key to success for Africa to speak with one voice and to unleash the potential of the youth and for them to gain sustainable livelihoods and self-actualization. The trade area could have a combined gross domestic product around 3.4 trillion, but achieving its full potential depends on significant policy reforms and trade facilitation measures across African signatory nations. We need to have what we call a radical shift or a paradigm shift if we want to move forward with the rhetorics. Quite a lot of talk is going on. How do we make things happen is the fundamental issue that we should think when we consider AFTA at this stage. AFTA aims to reduce tariffs among members and cover policy areas. This is responding to some of the very issues that were raised in the morning about the barriers, the challenges, and what young people want to do and why some of them cannot do it. So we have to listen very carefully to what AFTA does, and we take advantage of AFTA. I am very happy that the experts on AFTA are here, and I have read extensively on AFTA because I was very lucky to negotiate for my country when we came out of the dictatorship, and I was present in Rwanda when my president signed it because I did the negotiation with under my ministry then. So it aims to reduce tariffs among members and covers policy areas such as trade facilitation and services, as well as regulatory measures such as sanitary standards and technical barriers to trade. It was mentioned here, most of the speakers have talked about that. These are what it removes, because that is not the job of the young people. It is the job of our governments. We have to delineate what we can do, what is our comparative advantage and our roles in order for us as Africa to be able to deal with the hurdles that we face in our countries. Thus, the primary duty bearer for that is our governments, is our states. The agreement was brokered by the African Union and was signed by 44 of its member states in Kigali, Rwanda on March 21st, 2018. As of May 2022, 46 of the 54 signatories had deposited their instruments of ratification with the chair of the African Union Commission, making them state parties to the agreement. AFTA is hosted in Ghana. In a bid to advance AFTA, further progresses need to be made in addressing rules of origin and expand the guided trade initiatives between more countries within the continent. Folks, my dear, we have a lot of potential in Africa. Yes, we are in different sectors. You have West Africa, South Africa, East Africa, North Africa, and whatever you have, but it's the same continent. We have to facilitate trade between us. There is a lot of potential, and we can become young millionaires. I can assure you of that when some of these barriers are addressed. It is noted, in a bid to advance AFTA further, progress needs to be made in addressing rules of origin and expand the guided trade initiatives between more countries within the continent. Now, the rules of origin can be clarified by the various countries, and what do they mean are issues that the technical experts should take in, and you should try as much as possible to educate, because you need to be knowledgeable in what you are doing. You need to understand the dynamics in what you are doing so that you could take advantage of them. It is noted that Trade integration across the African continent is limited by outdated border transport infrastructure and a patchwork of different regulations across the markets. You go to some regions, they have their regulations. You go to others, they have others, and now we are talking about integration. How can we integrate the region if those barriers are not removed? Our governments have often created trade barriers to defend their markets from regional competition, making it more expensive for countries to trade with near neighbors than countries much further. And we all know the statistics are there to speak. In 2007, intra-African exports were 16.6% of total export, compared to 68.1% in Europe. African Europe, 68.1%. Within Africa, 16.6%. 54% in Asia and 55% in America and 7% in Oceania. According to UNCTAD, intra-African trade defined as the average of intra-African export and imports was around 2% during the period 2015 to 2017. The statistics are speaking for themselves. Gender in the AFTA is a key element to be cognizant of. The presentation that was made this morning in terms of the statistics and the gender representation, the gender disparity, we need to take account of that. We already know that women form the majority of our populations. There was a very nice analysis that was made by the statistician. But why is it that it's not taken into consideration? These are things that we have to apply our gender lens. Women often benefit less in international trade and investment and face specific forms of discrimination, including unequal access to resources. Inclusive and sustainable development cannot be achieved without realizing gender equality. It cannot happen. On the continent, when we talk about trade and development, we cannot underestimate the role that gender plays, where women and girls play a key role in the economy. In the informal sector, almost, they form 95%. They play a key role on that. Therefore, the AFTA draft protocol makes explicit reference to gender and or women in the preamble and the provision dealing with investment promotion, administrative and judicial treatment, CSR, that means corporate social responsibility and human resource development. It recognizes the importance of encouraging investment activities that benefit economically disadvantaged areas, small and medium-sized enterprises, local communities, indigenous people, and underrepresented groups, including women and youth. People have talked about it. The panel there, somebody was talking about it. The potential is there. The little things that we consider as stupid and simple are the very little things that become what we call the innovations. And if you look into the history of trade and innovations, sitting down on a table, eating apple and playing on the computer, and today Apple is a brand. I guess you understand what I talk about when I say technology. So these are little things. You might be sitting down there thinking, so let's look at what is on the ground, what is in our context specific, and what you think can generate that. It is noted that we must take advantage of all these small and medium scale, because these are the facilitators of the trade. It is noted that this massive single continental market is expected to increase intra-African trade by 52.3%, deepen continental integration, increase productivity, create more jobs, and avail substantial gender balance opportunities by including women and youth on Africa's trade liberalization. When you talk about liberalization, we have to open the market, but then there are policies that need to be placed where liberalization also should be looked at within a creative niche. You cannot isolate. The world is a global village, and we are not saying we want to isolate, but let us first and foremost come together, look at what we want to do, and speak with one voice, and play on our comparative advantage in order to capture the resources. If AFTA will succeed, the following must be put into consideration and give its proper attention. 1, policymakers must be committed to free movement of labor for an effective, efficient, and successful functioning of the free trade areas. Having subscribed to the protocol and free movement of persons which seeks to establish a visa-free zone within the AFTA countries must respect and make it happen. We must respect and make it happen. Imagine within the continent, when you are coming, you need to get a visa. They give you conditions. If you are to carry fish from West Africa to South Africa, or you want to bring some vegetables from this thing, they will tell you it takes you 10 working days to do, whilst the mangoes, the cashews, the oranges, the pears and everything are done whilst we are running after just that paper, and we're talking about regional integration. Priority must be given to women and youth in all the processes and procedures of AFTA implementation arrangement. They should not be seen as afterthought. They have their perspective, They are living, they have ideas, they also know what they want. I think to become an entrepreneur, you have to have that liberty to think about dream, and then bring your dream and see how it fits in order for it to be taken. Africa must be united to defend our own interests, because AFTA is a project that is designed to create the enabling environment for trade and investment in our continent, and leaders must be committed to see it succeed. We cannot go out there and say we are part of the global ecosystem when we do not even have a voice to negotiate on matters that touches Africa as a whole. We must endeavor to remove trade along multilateral tracks to give us a collective voice to break barriers. Finally, the gender gap in our continent's developmental initiatives have resulted in our low and slow development and progress. Women and girls, as well as the young people's concerns, are most of the time taken for granted and taken as add-ons. This means they have not been part of the conceptualization, the planning, and budgeting of the issues affecting them, and that results in marginalization and discrimination. We must leverage the demographic dividend that Africa has and critically look at the context we are coming from and ensure that no one is left behind. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to, women and youth must be seen to be creators, actors, facilitators, and seen as leaders for the designing, planning, implementation stages to unlock their ideas and potentials. I am sure that if AFTA is driven by women and youth, we will be able to unlock the latent potential of the continent to facilitate sustainable economic growth and development. I hope that these issues that are flagged will create the opportunity to consider as we move towards the fulfillment of the AFTA remaining aspects to come with a better African trade and investment for our women and youth. I want to thank all of you. You are a shining light to the continent, and I think, Nida, you are doing a great job. Continue the work, and African leaders will have to be committed. Let us believe in what we put on paper and make it happen. The world is a global village, and we must prepare our young people to be up to it, to move forward. I thank you all.
Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.